What's up guys, welcome back to another tutorial. In the previous video we looked at how you can basically set up less CSS, and this is what we built from the previous tutorial. So today we are going to be looking at variables and nesting in less CSS. So I'll open my VS Code and we are going to build in from what we made last time. So I'll go to index.html as you can see. So let me give this document a title, tutorial, and then here I'll create something just basic. So I'll add a div and I'll give it a class which I'll call container, and then inside that div I will put this h1, and then also I'll add an anchor tag and I'll give it a class of button, and then I'll give it a name, click me. So this is just our HTML, and when we open it you can see that is what we have. So after that, I'm going to open my less CSS file. So I'll just click on less CSS and then I'll remove all the styles that we created before. Go here and open terminal and I create new terminal. And then we shall run the command less watch compiler less CSS and press enter. So now you can see it's watching file changes and the changes will be automatically reflected right here. I hope you can see this. All right, so now let's start writing our less CSS code. And the purpose of today's video is for you to understand variables and also nesting. So I'll start with variables in less. Let me write a comment. So variables are basically used to store the value that can be reused throughout the style sheet. Variables really make it so easy to manage or change value consistently. So for example, I'm going to just create a variable and I'll call it primary color. And then I'll give it a color, for example. And then I'll also give font size. I'll create a variable called font size. And I'll give it 16 pixels. And then I'll give margin. And I'll give it 10 pixels. So now after that, I'll just style the body. And I'll give the body color. And I'll get our variable, which is our primary color. That. And then I'll give the font size. And just get the variable, which is font size, and then margin, and I'll give it a variable called margin. So that is how you basically use variables. We can also style the h1 and just say color, and then we get the primary color, which is the variable. It's already used there since we already created their color. So you can actually even just remove this, and then we can say font size. Add font size, and then let's put this in brackets since we want it to be bigger. So we shall remove this and then say add font size and then multiply it by 2 and just say times 2. And you can see now the font size has increased. So in this example, you see that primary color, font size, and margin, these are variables, and these variables are used in the body or in the other selectors to use consistent styles throughout your list. So now let's look at nesting. So nesting in less basically allows you to nest your CSS selectors in a way that it is following the same visual hierarchy of your HTML. So this makes CSS more readable and maintainable in relationship with child and parent elements. So let's look at an example of nesting. So in our HTML file, we had a div container here. So keep track of this. So we are going to start with our container class. And then inside, we shall give the container maybe a maximum width of 1200 pixels. And then we give it a margin 0 auto. And then we can give it padding 20 pixels. Now, still inside the container, you can see here we have h1. So we can just nest h1 in here. So let me write a comment here. So I'll just do h1 and then put the h1 styles in here. So that means we are going to remove all these that we put up here, remove this as well, and then just add the styles there within the container. That is what we call nesting. So after the h1, we can still nest the button class. Remember that class called button. In here, we can give the button display, inline block, padding. We can give it 10 pixels, 20 pixels. We can give it a background color. And then we get our variable, which is primary color. You can add any other variable if you want to. And then we can give it a color of white. So let me add another variable here for secondary color. So let's say secondary color. Let's do orange. Let me try to find the hex code. So we can say text align center, and then we give it border radius 5 pixels, and then we can remove the underline by just saying text decoration none, and that is our button. So now, still within the button, we can add a hover class. This is another nest. To add the hover class, we just do and colon, and then call it hover, and then put the style there, and we just say background color, and we bring in the secondary color that we created right here. So when you check this out, you can see that is what happens. And this is so interesting. So let's go through it together once again. So these are variables which are defined and is used within the nested structures. As you can see, we have this used here. We have this used here. And nesting helps you to keep everything just in place. You can see everything within the container is just nested within the container throughout the CSS. Now let's look at our files here. You see in the less file, everything is nested, but when we go to the compiled CSS, you can see how everything appears here. So organized and easy. So when you use variables and nesting in less, this makes your style sheet more maintainable and easier to read. Variables allow you for consistency and the values across all this. Sorry, let me show you in the nest. Everywhere you use primary color, the values are just going to be the same. You don't have to look for the specific color code or whatever. And nesting, on the other hand, will keep your code easier to read and easier to maintain. So thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next one.